more formal introduction in just a little bit as part of my presentation. I'm going to share my screen and get started here. So this is taking space and making space. I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge today the Seminole and Timucua peoples whose ancestral and traditional land we live and work on. We pay respect to Indigenous peoples from the past, to the present, to the future generations yet born. This land was taken through violence, the violation of treaties, and broken promises. Colonialism and oppression are an ongoing process, and we need to be mindful not to perpetuate them. I left some links that will be shared in the chat as well. They are excellent resources to find maps of the Native peoples that historically lived in your area. I highly recommend that you use these resources. So who am I? Hi, my name is Cayley, and I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. Identity is something that means different things to different people. We often use labels to categorize ourselves and others. While these labels can be helpful, they can be harmful as well. Making generalizations about people based on a label they fit under ignores the richness of the individual and may be offensive. Here are some labels I use. Now, in the chat or speaking aloud, what are some labels that you use to identify yourself?
So one label I use would be my pronouns as he, him, as well as being Hispanic.
Okay, excellent. I see Sophia said that Hispanic is something that she, or I don't want to assume your pronouns, they use, and Benjamin uses he, him pronouns. Great, so this is something to think about, what labels you use and then what labels you may intrinsically, automatically put on others. So what is inclusive language? Inclusive language is language that is free from words, phrases, or tones that reflect prejudice, stereotyped, or discriminatory views of a particular people or groups. It is also language that doesn't deliberately or inadvertently exclude people from being seen as part of a group. Inclusive language is sometimes called non-discriminatory language. The language we use is powerful and impactful. What you say can change lives or even possibly end them. Minorities often experience oppressive language that may exclude them, stereotype them, or even erase or ignore their identities and experiences completely. As you can see, suicide rates are much higher in minorities, with female identifying Indigenous people aged 15 to 24 having the highest suicide rate in the country. Sorry, this makes me really sad. So how does this apply to outdoor education? How you choose to address your participants is hugely important. When you talk to them, it will be your words that will have to convince them that you are competent and trustworthy. Inclusive language has the power to aid individuals in reaching their greatest potential. Some of the benefits of inclusive language in outdoor guiding are: it can establish a safe environment and trust, build rapport for people to safely step outside of their comfort zone, promote teamwork, prevent mental health problems, and diminish suicide rates. It helps with self-identification, leading to self-actualization. People can learn more about the world and become more well-rounded. It's a celebration of diversity, and it diminishes prejudice. Here are some common phrases that are offensive, either because they are inaccurate or they were used inappropriately as a medical diagnosis in the past. An example of this is the word homosexual. It was used by the American Psychiatric Association in 1973 as a reason to imprison people in psychiatric wards where they could be experimented on and even lobotomized. Here are alternatives to these words that are just as expressive and not as oppressive. As an aside, there are words that have been reclaimed by a group of people when it was previously a slur. An example of this is the word queer. I suggest you be careful with reclaimed words because they may still be offensive to the generation that knew it as a slur. Our inclusivity toolbox. First, love people well. This means pay attention to others' needs. You cannot love someone well if you give them what you need, as that is not likely to be the same as what they need. Active listening is an excellent tool to love someone well. Take space and make space. Take the time for self-care and to create the space you need in your life. Make space by giving others the opportunity to express themselves freely without fear of judgment or aggression. Call people in, not out. Oftentimes, when we catch someone saying or doing something they shouldn't, we just tell them not to do that, which can cause them to shut down or alienate them. Calling people in is an opportunity for open dialogue to express what that person was doing was wrong or how their actions or words impacted you. Invite them to discuss with you alternative ways of expressing themselves using some of the tools we have already discussed. Lastly, keep each other accountable. As outdoor guides, we already have this incredible culture of constructive feedback. Support each other and accept that you are going to make mistakes. Just gently correct yourself or others and move on. Lastly, we are not just a community of outdoor guides. We are a family, which means no one gets left behind or forgotten. Don't be afraid to ask for help or ask questions. We are all here to support you. And now I have time for questions for anyone who may have some.
More of a comment. I really liked what you said about just looking in your toolbox for things that you can use to make, our little corner of the world a little bit more inclusive. I think Patty last night talked a lot about that. It's like finding the tools that you have in your toolbox to be able to just make people feel more welcomed and like help the world in the way that you can. And so I really liked that you kind of expounded upon that as well.
It's also a comment, but I really like resonated with the calling people in, because I feel it's very easy for us to just go out, tell someone, no, you're wrong, it's this way, not that way. But kind of inviting them for that more of a conversation, and also ties in with that LNT talk of like going deeper in with them, telling them the why.
I really like that.
Do you have any recommendations or ways that we as like collegiate outdoor rec semi-professionals, just us in this industry, any ways that we could work on being more inclusive with our speech and our language?
I think using a land acknowledgement every time you are doing a trip and doing a land acknowledgement for the place that you're going is really important. And also asking everyone their pronouns and sharing your own pronouns. Just make that a normal thing that's always accepted. Just have it be an automatic thing.
Any advice for maybe making that a little less awkward sometimes? I feel like it took a long time for me to be able to get in that habit of being like, hey, my name's Pat, I use he him pronouns. And so like maybe any advice for making that a little less, like I said, a little less awkward and making that more natural for people?
I think practice is going to be your biggest help. And figuring out how it flows. So just having it immediately, like you said, my name is Patrick, my pronouns are he, him, instead of breaking it off and saying, what are your preferred pronouns? Because a lot of times preferred pronouns implicates that there's like a choice. And trans people are not choosing they don't have a choice. They are the gender that they were born as, like within themselves. So I wouldn't say what are your preferred pronouns. I would always say what are your pronouns. And I liked how you naturally just flowed from, hi, my name is Patrick. I use he, him pronouns. That's a great way to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd never heard that before, like the preferred pronouns. It really makes sense, though, how that could be taken as, a little bit presumptuous if you say preferred pronouns as opposed to just pronouns. I like that. Thank you.
I'd like to ask, what are some good ways to call people in scenarios where they may become defensive of?
Yeah. So use I-centered language. Don't blame them. Just express how you are feeling and talk from your perspective of your experience and say, hey, I was really offended, but when you said X, Y, and Z, can you, this is why I was offended. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And you kind of try to find a middle ground where you both are understanding what the issue was.
Now, how would you recommend we go about the approach where it's not something that offends you? Like if somebody says something that doesn't offend me in particular, but I know it's something that isn't, acceptable language and could offend someone else.
Yeah, so you could say, hey, I just noticed that you use this language. I know that it could offend certain groups of people, and it's really unkind to use that language. And I would really appreciate it if you didn't. You can even, if you have a specific example of like a friend that you're not going to out or anything like that. But if you had someone specific in mind, you could say, hey, my friend experiences this identity. This is really offensive to them. Could you please not continue using that language?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions or comments for Cayley? All right, Cayley, was that all you had prepared, or was there something else you wanted to go over?
Yeah, no, that's all. I realize that you guys have had a long day of presentations, and since I'm the last one, I thought I'd give you a longer break. I hope that this was really helpful to you and you'll keep it in mind in the future when you're interacting with anyone.
Absolutely, Cayley. We appreciate that. And thank you so much for giving all of this, just like Cindy just said, all of your insight is really appreciated and really just insightful for ways that we can continue to move forward and be a more welcoming industry and student body. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, y'all. So the next thing that we have on the itinerary here is going to be the raffles and closing ceremony, which is in about 45 minutes. Everybody that signed up got a raffle ticket, and we have some pretty cool raffles. The best of which is going to be, I think it's a 2-person tent, possibly even a 3-person tent. I can't remember. So and there are about 15 raffles. So make sure that you come to that one so you've got a chance of winning those. And again, Cayley, thank you so much. Thank you to all the volunteers and all the other presenters as well. Hopefully we will see you in the next session. Thank you, everybody.
Real quick before everyone goes, I'll just share the